Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.
You're listening to the Sportsman's Nation Podcast Network, brought to you by Interstate Batteries. From your truck to your trail camera and everything in between, if you have a piece of hunting gear or a piece of hunting equipment that needs a battery, Interstate Batteries has got you covered. You can go to a local retail store, or you can go visit online at interstatebatteries.com. They have thousands of local retail shops all over the U.S., so you can go there as well. Interstate Batteries, outrageously dependable.
My name is Clay Newcomb, and I'm the host of the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. I'll also be your host into the world of hunting the icon of North American wilderness, the bear. We'll talk about tactics, gear, conservation, but we'll also bring you into some of the wildest country on the planet, chasing bear. On this episode, I'm joined by my friend Chris Powell of the Houndsman XP Podcast. He was on his way back from Arizona, headed back to Indiana, stopped by our Northwest Arkansas global headquarters, and we had a very interesting conversation. Chris is he's a retired game warden, conservation officer, and so we spend quite a bit of the podcast talking about law enforcement, wildlife-related law enforcement, and he had some incredible stories. Chris was also a dog trainer for law enforcement purposes, and so we go into quite a bit of that, and we talk about hound or dog noses, their ability to smell, and we translate that into the hunting context. So we do talk quite a bit about hounds and talk about how hounds smell, but it comes from his knowledge and experience in training these dogs, drug dogs, and wildlife-related law enforcement dogs. So, super interesting. I want to draw your attention to our friends at the Western Bear Foundation. As many know, the grizzly bear population has exploded in Wyoming, Montana, and parts of Idaho, and the Western Bear Foundation is trying to help develop and have a voice inside the management plans for grizzly and black bear. The Western Bear Foundation is dedicated to the protection and development of bears, bear habitat, and bear hunting in the western United States. Check out our friends at the Western Bear Foundation. We're at the Bear Hunting Magazine Global Headquarters today, and I've got with me a gentleman that has become a good friend of mine, but today's actually the first day that we've shaking hands.
Yep, a lot of phone conversations.
Yes. I've got Chris Powell with me here. Yep. Chris is the host with Steve Fielder on the Houndsman XP Podcast. And so Chris is a big houndsman, and he's just now coming back through Arkansas from Arizona.
I wanted to stop by here. I had to come back through Arkansas.
You had to.
Stop at the global headquarters.
Chris, they say, I done a lot of history research on Arkansas as a state and like the pioneer times and how it was homesteaded.
Right.
And Arkansas is basically on the way to nowhere. And so the only people that showed up here were bandits and outlaws and those who were indebted and distressed.
Yep.
And so if you're hauling dogs from Indiana all the way out to chase bears in Arizona, you might qualify as like in that category of like, I don't know.
Well, I called my wife when I talked to my wife the other day. She asked me how it was going, and I told her, I said, well, I've got everything I need with me. So I could literally stop anywhere. I got all my hunting gear, all my dogs. Yeah, I'm just freewheeling right now.
Freewheeling.
She said, what about me? And I said, if you want to meet me somewhere, we're good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I'm glad that you stopped by today, first of all. Is this actually on the way through? I mean, would you come through this right in here?
I came within 40 miles north of you on the way out. So I think. Just give or take.
You went through Joplin or somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You would have come right pretty close through here, through West Fork, Fayetteville area.
Well, you have an opportunity to stop at the Bear Hunting Magazine World Headquarters. You don't pass it out.
So Chris has got his side by side with his new dog box, aluminum dog box built on the back, which is really cool. Got the hounds tied out front.
Yeah.
And we recorded a whole other intro to this podcast before my dog that's in here right now, my Fern, walked over the cords, pulled all our equipment off the table, and crashed all our stuff on the ground. So we got a good start here, Chris.
Hey, we're starting over. Let's do it.
We're starting over. But no, so what we're going to talk about, or what I want to talk about with you, is I do want to talk about hound stuff. I want to talk about the Houndsman XP podcast. And I want to learn a little bit more about you, Chris. Chris is a retired game warden. So Chris is, you're young to be retired.
I am.
How old are you, 35?
No, yeah. Thanks for that. So, no, I just
You almost took me serious. You're like, no, Clay, I'm not 35.
Yeah, no, I just turned 50 in February.
Man, so when did you start? When did you become a game warden? You had to have been young.
Well, yeah, when I was 21 years old.
Okay.
Yep.
So you can retire after how long?
It's kind of a confusing deal, but you have to have 25 years of service in for to get your insurance. So that's always that's how they trap you and make you stay for that long. But you have to be 50 before you can start drawing any retirement benefits. So I had my time in for my insurance, and then just had to wait a few months to start collecting my retirement funds. So I had another job opportunity as well. So it felt right. It was the right time.
Good. Well, that's when I see guys retire at a young age. I mean, I'd say that's super young to retire.
It is.
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, my grandfather retired when he was 50, and had a successful floor covering business back in Columbus, Indiana, and I didn't have any intention. Well, I'm still not retired. I mean, I've got stuff going on between the podcast and home renovation business. Then I stay pretty busy. So
yeah. Well, tell me about. Well, I guess first tell me about how you got into hounds, because that would be a pretty significant passion inside your life is hounds.
Right.
And I don't know if I want to get into game warden stuff or hound stuff first. Let's save the hound stuff for last, because once we get into hounds, we're going to roll into lots of different topics.
Okay.
But so 21 years old, you decided you wanted to be a game warden.
I knew a long time before that.
Well, okay, here's my question.
Okay.
Did you do it because being a game warden was the only way that you knew how to work in the, quote, outdoor industry? Or were you truly interested in law enforcement? Or did you truly have this natural inborn desire as a young man to protect wildlife?
Wow, that's complex.
You can just tell me why you did it.
I guess it was a deal where I knew from a young age I love to hunt. I love the outdoors. And we get applicants all the time. I spent several years training recruits for the department. And you always get people that say, you ask them, why do you want to be a game warden?
Yeah.
And
so you ask them that?
Okay. Yeah, you always ask them, why do you want to be a conservation officer? Well, I like to hunt and I like to fish. I love the outdoors. Well, there's a lot of people that do that. Why do you want to be a conservation officer? And it's kind of a lifestyle type thing. It's a deal where I always said this. conservation officers have a deep affection for the natural resources. You know, the same things that we're trying to go out and protect most of the time are the same areas that we recreate. You know, if I was a state trooper, you know, I don't recreate with meth, you know, but as a conservation officer, you recreate hunting, fishing, doing all those things.
Yeah.
And it becomes a lifestyle. It's not just a job. And one of the biggest things for me about being a conservation officer, and maybe I'm jumping ahead here, giving you the 30,000-foot view right now.
Yeah.
The thing that I enjoyed the most was I had a job to do, and I was very serious about that job. But the underlying passion behind everything else was to protect hunting. You know,
even from a young age.
Yeah, even when I was 21 years old. Yeah, I mean, it's law enforcement, and you have to do the law enforcement part, and I did that aggressively, but it was always with the underlying thought that you want to do something illegal, you are not representing me as a hunter.
I see.
Yeah, so that's how I always approached it. So it wasn't to go out and hunt down the true sportsman and try to find something wrong. It was to protect the sport of hunting from poachers and violators.
Do you think that's common, though? Because I don't know if it is.
I think it is.
You think it is?
Yeah, being on the inside of law enforcement, there's very few people in my business, and I know them from East Coast, West Coast, all across the country, and the number one priority is to protect hunting. You know, biologists a lot of times are the same way. You know, they get questioned a lot on the things that the decisions they make and rules, processes, and stuff. But they're trying to do the best thing for the resource and to represent sportsmen.
Yeah, that's good. I like to hear that because, you know, you kind of have the general consensus in the hunting community, I think, would be kind of that game wardens, and I'm using the term that people would use if they were thinking.
Recognize, yep, I get it.
Would say would they feel some animosity towards them, even if they're law abiding. Mm-hmm. You know,
sure.
And in some sense, that's good in the hunting community to have the fear of God inside of you to obey the game laws, which I really strongly do. Mm-hmm. I mean, I am almost manic about obeying game laws. I'm always worried I'm going to make a mistake. You know.
Yeah,
And because you make a mistake, you still get, you know, you broke the law.
One of the things, you know, a person ought to be able to go out and enjoy hunting without the fear of making a mistake.
Yeah.
And there are legitimate reasons why you feel that way. As an officer, when you pull up to a situation, we have no personal history with Clay Newcomb. You know, so we've got to be able to sift through that chaff and get down to you know, what's really going on here.
Right. So you don't know if I'm a good guy or a bad guy.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So you just got to deal with the information you have.
Right.
And this guy may have made a mistake, and you don't know if he did it on purpose or if he did it on accident or if he.
You know, what's really going on here.
Yeah.
You know, and I was a supervisor for several years, and one of the worst mistakes that officers make is they feel like they've got to make cases to build their reputation among their peers as officers. And it's not that it's competitive, but you don't want to appear to be lazy. You know, our training
or too soft.
Yeah, or too soft. You know, and get ran over. Our training is very high. I mean, it's very high energy. It's very intense. We got a recruit class going on in Indiana right now, and we have drill instructors in those classes, and we try to build character principles in these guys. And if you're lazy or you're a sluffer, you are not going to make it. You're not going to become an officer in Indiana. And then that carries over into an officer's career where he wants to be successful and he wants to, you know, build a good reputation among himself. And I think a lot of times we get go down rabbit paths where we're trying to impress our peers rather than serve the sporting public.
Yeah.
And so that I've been there, I've done it, but I used to tell my guys, who needs this ticket? If you're going to write a ticket, you better make sure that the situation warrants it. Does the person you're arresting need that, or do you need that?
Right.
Are you doing it for them because you think that it's warranted, or are you doing it for you because you want to boast your ego?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a slippery slope, and when you're on the outside and you're looking into it,
I know it's not a fair assessment.
And I guess
these guys are just doing their job.
I just learned to live with it. But I can't tell you the number of times. I worked in the same area for 25 years, and a lot of the people I arrested, I sat in church with. Some of the people I arrested, end up.
You went to church with a rough crowd, man.
I took a confession. The guy wanted to meet me at the church to talk to me about an illegal turkey he shot. Is that right? Yeah, and I don't know if he felt like he could tell the truth there. He couldn't lie at church or what, but So I did go to church with those guys, and it's not like there was some great pleasure in making arrests. There is some satisfaction in knowing that you worked an investigation and you came down to the facts. You did your job. So it was satisfying. So
I've never thought of it from a position of that you are doing it in defense of hunting. I think that's really, I like that. I like that side of it.
And we started I was one of the founders of the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance in Indiana because hound hunters did not have a voice in Indiana. Largely misunderstood. A lot of the laws that were on the books, and some still exist, were extremely antiquated. And with the tenure in the department, at the time we started the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance, we were able to effectively, talk to some of the people that I worked with every day and get some changes made that opened up opportunities for people to be involved in hound sports in Indiana.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go straight to a question that is like the sensational question that like a 10-year-old would ask you. Were you ever have to draw your gun or be in any kind of really serious, crazy situation while you were game wardening?
Yeah, I was in 3 deadly force situations in 28 years.
Were they wildlife related or drug related? Because I know
1 was wildlife related, 2 were drug and alcohol related.
Okay.
Conservation officers in Indiana are multitask. We're full law enforcement.
Yeah.
Anything that you could get pulled over for on the interstate, a conservation officer could stop you in Indiana and do that same
traffic
job.
Violation.
Absolutely.
Really?
If it's a matter, and most of the time it's a deal where if it's a matter of public safety, we'll go ahead and do it. If we see a drunk driver going down the road in front of us on the interstate, we've still taken an oath to protect the public and let him go. But anyway, 3 deadly force situations in 28 years. 1 was a deer camp situation where some guys from out of state were in our area, and they had some illegal deer. We had some information that they had illegal deer, and we were I was actually a canine handler at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I ran a multi-purpose tracking dog wildlife detection.
What breed was it?
She was a Labrador.
Really?
Labrador Retriever.
So it wasn't like an attack type dog.
No,
it was a drug sniffing dog.
No, it was not a protection trained dog.
Okay.
So we had information there were illegal deer in this camp, and the camp was behind the man's daughter's residence. So you've got some curtilage issues there, but we got permission to go up there and look around, and we suspected that the deer was away from camp, so I had my dog, got her out, and while I'm getting the dog out, then she went and let out her 160-pound bull mastiff. And automatically that dog keyed in on my dog and was trying to, when he wrapped, the dog was standing 30 feet away from me, see the dog, and I said, you need to tie your dog up. And she ignored me. She made a half effort to grab the dog. She knew why she turned that dog out. And she didn't know what it would do, whether it would be me or my dog. But so the dog charges us. And then at 30 feet, dog wraps my left leg. As soon as it's wrapping my left leg, I shoot the dog. Have to kill their dog right in their driveway.
Wow.
Knew I plowed it. At the same time, Dad's standing over there, and he picks up, or he pulls.
Are you by yourself, or do you have other people with you?
My partner was down, had another officer there. He was down the hill.
Okay.
So he hears a gunshot, and he's coming up in his truck at that point. Well, Dad pulls a straight knife out of his sheath. And so now I've got a dead dog and I've got another threat, and he decided that wasn't a very good idea. So that resolved itself. The other two were drug related. The last one was a guy that was strung out on meth, and the call came in as a suspicious vehicle, stranded motorist type thing. When I arrived on scene, I could tell he was wigged out and sitting right in front of my friend's house in my community.
Oh, wow.
Turned into a fight. The fight went to the ground. Once he starts pulling on your gun, then the fight changes. So he's trying to get my gun out of my holster, and my friend's wife was standing there, and she pulled her own pistol and shot and killed the guy.
Wow.
Yeah. So been a little bit of excitement over 28 years.
So a civilian woman bystander.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow.
Yep, shot him and killed him. When she shot,
while you guys are on the ground.
Oh yeah,
she must have been a good shot.
She was capable, familiar with her.
Was that? I mean, everything was okay with that and with the law. I mean, like she was justified.
Yeah. You know, they tried to file civil suits on that and wrongful death suits, and they named everybody from the governor down to people that weren't even there, to ex-sheriffs and all kinds of stuff in the community. And they tried to sue her personally, and they weren't successful in doing that. In fact, this last year, Indiana passed an assisted citizens law where it protects citizens that are coming to the aid of law enforcement. So there was actually legislation that came out of that.
Wow. That's intense, man.
Yeah, that was pretty intense. Like we say, that was pretty intense.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Well, but you're not. I've got a buddy, Brent Reeves, who's he's still in law enforcement, but he's not working in the field anymore. Okay, and so he says every time I say, "How you doing, man?" and he says, "I'm doing great. Nobody's shooting at me today."
Yeah.
So that's like, you know, his thing is, as long as nobody's shooting at me, it's a good day.
Right.
So nobody's shooting at you anymore.
Nope. Not lately.
Not lately, anyway.
Yeah.
They didn't shoot at you in Arizona?
No, we got out of there without any shots fired at anybody.
Yeah. Well, no, that's really interesting stuff. So were you a dog trainer?
Mm-hmm.
So you trained this dog. Now this dog would have. You never told us what happened. Did they find the deer?
No, there was no deer in camp. And after that, the deal with the Mastiff and everything going on, that became a secondary type thing.
Okay.
There was some circumstantial evidence, but the deer was ultimately, I'm sure, became a Lacey Act violation when it got transported back to Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But you trained that dog?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I did.
Wow. So it was a drug dog,
Wildlife detection.
Wildlife detection dog.
And what that means is, if you see a checkpoint, some of the things that we did, like walleye, we would set up a wildlife checkpoint, and we'd catch people coming back with anywhere from 2 times a daily bag limit to somebody that was selling to a restaurant in Cincinnati, for
so
walleye.
that dog could smell fish inside of a cooler?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no problem.
Could you tell it which species of fish you needed?
No, you have to cross train them. It's not like any hit I get, well, you got to have a target species, and you got to do some training on that.
But it would have picked up if there had been deer meat in there. It would have.
She would have alerted. She would have alerted on that.
So just any kind of organic meat or
not necessarily
organic matter was what I meant.
She would not hit on beef, but she would hit on deer.
No way.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's how sensitive a dog's olfactory system is. And you just set them up.
What was her cue that you knew she was keying in?
She would scratch. She would scratch at the cooler. Probably the best thing that she was, was for finding firearms evidence. And we did everything from murders to fish and wildlife cases. So shotgun wad scattered somewhere out in a 10-acre field.
Would she know if you went up to a truck what you were looking for?
No.
So if she smelled burnt shell casings, she would alert that. Mm-hmm. She would alert deer meat. She would alert fish.
Right.
So just anything. So you might dig in there and find some shotgun shells, and that's not what you're worried about.
No, she wouldn't hit on like a standard unloaded shotgun shell. Most of the time, the firearm stuff was done out in the field.
Okay.
We've got to put the pieces of the case together.
Okay, where did he shoot the deer? Where's the shell casing on the ground? Would you just free cast her?
Yeah, just free cast her, and she would quarter the field. And as soon as she found it, bang, she was on it. She could find firearms underwater.
No way.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Did it several times in
underwater.
Mm-hmm. She found
How is that? Scent is traveling up through the water and escaping at the surface of the water.
Well, it comes up, and then gun oils and burnt powder residue come down, and then they get lodged around the rock or along the edges, and she locates the firearm in the water like that.
That's crazy.
One of the most interesting. I mean, it's kind of a dark story, but we were looking for a missing person one time, and found a spot on the edge of this waterfall with a deep hole of water in it, and there was a note and some sleeping pills set up there, and I had her on a tracking harness, and she kept jumping in the water, and it was kind of warm, and the handler's always the weakest link. Okay, the dog knows what it's doing, and the main rule of canine handling is to trust your dog. She kept jumping in. I reel her in like a fish, and I've got policemen all the way. I've got other officers all the way around me, and here my dog's wanting to swim, and I'm like, this stupid dog. The third time she jumped in, she churned up the jacket of this woman.
Oh no!
That was in this deep hole of water. And one of the guys, like I said, we were by a waterfall, and a deputy was standing up on the ledge, and he could see down in there. And he goes, "There's something in there. There's a jacket." And sure enough. So it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing what a dog is capable of smelling. When we walk into a house, your wife's cooking dinner, and maybe she's cooking beef stew. We walk in, it's like, oh, beef stews, we're going to have beef stew. When a dog walks in there, they smell water, they smell carrots, they smell beef, they smell pepper.
Right.
Their brains are wired to discriminate different types of scent.
Yeah.
And that's why we're capable of breaking our hounds from deer, any unwanted game, possums.
Yeah.
And focus that in.
Yeah. Man, that's incredible. And, I heard somewhere on a podcast just recently where they were saying that there were cadaver dogs that were smelling stuff like 30 feet under the water, stuff like that, which is just insane.
Yeah.
Well, hey, this is a good place for us to step into hound stuff.
Yeah.
Talking about noses and stuff. As a I'm not going to say a new houndsman because I'd hound hunted a long time, but there was an experience I had with that dog sitting at your feet when she was a pup. It was a misty, rainy. I just remember the screen on my GPS was beaded with water, and it was cool. It was just kind of a mild fall night, but I remember I was leading Fern out, and she started bobbing her head up and down. Mm-hmm. Just how they do, just testing the wind.
Right.
And I wasn't going to turn her loose right there, but she was probably a year and a half old or something, and I just said, I might as well. So I just turned her loose, and she went on a beeline, 300 yards in a straight line. and located, never let out a bark on the ground, and located, and there was a coon in a tree. And I know it was a layup coon.
Sure.
And I that absolutely, and I mean, there's lots of dogs that can do that kind of stuff. So it's not, I mean, a hound can do that.
Right.
But I was just amazed. And I mean, hounds do that kind of stuff all the time. But for whatever reason, the way it all played out, it was just real clear to me that from 300 yards away, she smelled that coon sitting in a tree.
Yeah, scent a lot of times is a misunderstood, even among houndsmen.
Yeah.
You know, we know how to operate GPSs. We know how to do a lot of technical things with social media. You know, you can stream a live video from a tree right into social media now, and probably the most misunderstood thing is the most important thing, and that's that dog's nose. And a lot of people figure it out by just experience, but they still, scent is such a technical. It's physiological. It's air currents affect it. Humidity affects it.
That's a big factor, isn't it?
Yeah. So, you know, if you get a day or a night where the wind isn't blowing, but it's real humid, that dog will never smell that coon in that tree.
Right.
Because the scent actually gets suspended in the air where their nose can't reach it.
Yeah.
And you get a little breeze kicks up, and boom, it drops it down there where they can smell it. And now they can work with it. I just had this conversation in bear camp about, you know, hunting on snow. You know, a lot of times people get confused and they think that hounds are tracking. They have to track in the track itself in deep snow.
Right.
You know, because you'll see a hound stick his nose down in each track.
Yeah.
A lot of times what's happened is that body that is a living organism and it sheds cells every second. Every second that it's alive, it's shedding cells, and that's called scurf. When we exhale...
Say that again?
Scurf.
Scurf?
Yeah, it's called scurf. It's actually just shed cells that your body's shedding. You know?
Microscopic cells.
Yeah, you can put hundreds of them under a microscope and see them. And we've actually done that.
And that is what scent is.
That's what it is. That's coming off the animal, and then it's interacting with its environment to give it what's called a scent picture for the dog.
Yeah.
So as soon as it hits the ground, it's decomposing, and like you can have several scent pictures from where we're looking right now. You know, underneath these shade trees, it's not going to dehydrate as quick, so it's going to be more prevalent here underneath the shade trees, and it's going to last longer. But the same scent picture is going to change when we get down there to your driveway, where the sun can hit it and it's dry.
Okay.
Wind can actually affect it and bank it. You know, make it bank against vegetation. In the case of the snow track, like I was telling you, you know, the wind comes along, and it's like anything else. Where's it going to go? It's going to go in the deepest part. It's going to flow to that hole in the snow
because it's an actual physical particle.
Yes,
that has mass.
Absolutely.
So it's gonna drop.
Yep.
I mean, it can be suspended. I mean, obviously, scent can be high, but it's going to have a tendency, if there's no things pulling it up, to drop.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's going to deposit in those tracks. You know, you get a dog, you get a jump race where a bear or a lion or whatever just takes off. You know, they're leaving a scent plume behind them.
Yeah.
So that's why those dogs lift their heads, beeline it out.
They don't even have to put their nose on the ground.
Nope. And you got a dog that is putting its nose
they're smelling just like a tunnel of scent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They're in that plume. It's called a plume coming off of them.
Plume.
Yep. And they just, boom, they hit it.
These terms that you would have learned training law enforcement dogs.
Yeah.
Because this is not terminology I hear houndsmen say.
Yeah. So, you know, I started hound hunting when I was 13 years old and saw a lot of things over the years. And I went through canine trainer school. I'm going to say I was probably mid to late 20s when I started that.
Okay.
And when we started talking about these things, I kept getting these flashbacks of different things I'd seen as a houndsman.
Right.
So I'd been able to take my experience and put it with my training and then be able to talk about it and explain what's going on. There are thousands of houndsmen out there right now. They've learned all this without, you know, a dummy like me, I need to be able to see it in print, and look at it and put my hands on it and touch it. There's thousands of houndsmen out there that have figured this out just on experience, just being in the woods and being able to collect all this data without any kind of system to it at all.
Right. It's kind of anecdotal data.
Yeah.
Just what they've experienced.
Absolutely.
And what they've come to conclusions on.
One of the examples I always use is when I was probably 15. I didn't have my driver's license yet. And I was riding with an older houndsman, and a coon crossed the road in front of us. I've got a pup in the truck, And what's every kid want to do? You
turn
see
it
a
loose.
coon, turn it loose. And the older houndsman says, "Dog won't be able to run it." What do you mean he won't be able to run it? We just saw it cross the road.
Yeah.
He goes, "We're going to go down to the next intersection. We'll turn around. We'll come back, and then we'll see if your pup. We know right where it went."
Yeah.
And I'd done it 100 times. Was too dumb to realize, I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Right.
So, I'm thinking this is crazy. We might as well turn this pup loose now.
Yeah.
And we come back down the road, put the hound on the ground, takes the track the right way, ends up treeing the coon. And I asked him why. Why did that happen? And he said, "I don't know, but I've done it enough that I know it does."
Man, I wanted to interrupt you so bad just to say that's been my experience 100%. And I've never had anyone be able to tell me why. So I'm hoping you know why.
Yeah. Okay, so even a dog, canine's their natural instinct is try to find their scent picture on the ground. If you look at a dog's natural tracking pose, then it's
nose on the ground or 4 or 5 inches off the ground.
Somewhere down here, their head's always canted down at their shoulders, and they're picking up that track. Well, even a raccoon with the scent plume, that scent is suspended in the air until it has time to settle.
Well, what about the ground scent it's leaving with pads on the ground?
Pads are very, very minimal.
Really? So it's not leaving that much scent with actually what it's touching on the ground.
Even us, if you try to get a
trailing dog to trail us out through there, he wouldn't be trailing based upon what was on the bottom of our shoes?
No.
Is that what you're telling me?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, or even the bottom of your feet or on your hands. When they do a swab, if you do a DNA swab of yourself, where do they scrape?
Your mouth, right?
Inside your mouth.
Yeah.
How come they don't scrape your hands?
Nothing there?
You're using them all the time.
Yeah.
So the residual cells that are coming off your body are pretty minimal right there. I mean, if you handle something long enough, it'll be there. But animals are walking on their feet all the time. So those pads are tough. So there's not a lot of transfer there. But the animal exhaling, he's brushing up against brush. Hair's all cells, So when they go through brush, it knocks those cells off of there. They become suspended in the air until they settle.
So you're telling me the reason they can't correctly run that coon track, now they can smell it.
Oh yeah,
but they can't course it.
What's a pup do when you turn loose on something fresh like that?
It usually goes the wrong way, or it just. I mean, I've seen them just
running
just
around.
Confused.
They got their heads high.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure it out. Whereas if you wait 5, 10, 15 minutes, the scent settles on the ground. Boom, they can take it.
Man, I'm thinking of 2 exact scenarios with that dog right there, where we saw a coon cross the road, and I just dumped her out.
Yeah,
she didn't treat either one of them.
Yeah, and sounds like I might have contradicted myself because I talked about a jump race and the scent plume.
Yeah.
So what happens there is a jump race, the adrenal glands let loose. So now we've got a different type of scent in the picture.
Okay, so you're saying they're leaving more scent.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Once an animal knows it's being pursued, then they'll start dumping more scent.
Something happens.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And humans do the same thing.
Now I'm surprised in the world of just wild animals that there hasn't been some adaptation where an animal doesn't leave any scent. Like
young fawns.
Okay.
Young fawns leave very little scent.
Yeah.
a lot of times hounds will walk right up on them and won't even know they're there until, and that's just natural.
So there is something
defense.
like that inside of.
But some of the old timers will tell you that, they'll see a coon out in the field or an animal out in the field, and the coon will pick up its scent as a natural defense. That's not right. It's impossible to do. You just, it's not like, oh, there's a hound, I'm going to pick up my scent and run away.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. That could be some of that anecdotal evidence that the conclusion was totally wrong.
Yeah. The houndsman sees that he's not successful there, but he hasn't put it all together yet.
Yeah.
And that's the benefit. That's the benefit of I had as a trainer. Once you understand that, have you ever seen you've seen wind checkers that bow hunters use. If you look at that wind checker, the little puff bottle.
Right.
That's the thing. Your body's doing that all the time when you
Just
exhale.
Releasing scent.
All the time.
Yeah.
And you'll get areas that are scent saturated. If a bear lays down he's bedded down, he's saturating that whole area with scent.
Yeah. This reminds me of my pet peeve with whitetail hunters and big game hunters about human scent. Okay. There's this whole market about scent control.
Oh, yeah.
And my dad, I don't want to get into it. My dad's big into scent control with whitetails. And I get it. You can't kill a whitetail if he smells you.
Right.
So this has nothing to do with my dad. This has to do with this idea that if your clothes are clean, that a deer can't smell you. Mm-hmm. And what I always say is a deer could care less whether your clothes are clean. He's smelling you.
Yeah.
I mean, he's smelling the human inside those clothes.
Right.
And you're constantly emitting odor. You're constantly, you're sweating. You're passing gas out of all orifices of your body.
Exactly.
So it's just funny to me that people think, well, if I've got a clean T-shirt and underwear and jean or, hunting clothes that are scent free, then a deer can't smell me. Now, obviously, it helps because if your shirt smells bad, they can smell it. But he's smelling you, man.
Right. And we did a lot of experimentation when I first became a handler. Then it was when the big craze was for scent control.
What did you find? I'm intrigued.
Okay. This is what we found. We would have people bring their scent control clothes out.
Yeah.
Activated the whole 9 yards, and we tracked them like they were naked. Tracked them just like they were wearing anything else.
Okay.
It made no difference.
Wow.
A lot of that stuff is marketing, but I also believe that when I put that dog on the ground, she's looking for one thing. She's looking for human scent to track that hunter. When you have a deer walk through or an elk walk through, they're thinking about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Part of their attention is on predators. Part of their attention is on food. Part of their attention is on mating. A rutting buck, he doesn't have food on his mind, but he does have predators and he's got mate, the breeding season on his mind. So he's not totally focusing on that. So you can get away with it.
So maybe it's not a totally unbiased test. We're using a dog that's trained to detect human odor. Is that what you're saying?
Right. But to think that you're going to eliminate your human odor is the only way you can do it is if you're in a self-contained spacesuit.
Yeah. Man, that's interesting hearing you say that from your own personal observations because I've heard that same story before. Mm-hmm. And perhaps scent killer could reduce human odor so that if a deer came through, he would not feel like the danger was as immediate as if you didn't have it. Perhaps, and that's the only benefit that I see from it. And I've gotten away, and I haven't gone on too many scent rambles. Yeah, I'm on a rabbit trail. All I do is hunt the wind for whitetails, and I've killed as many big whitetails as I ever did when I was paying attention to.
Right.
I'm serious. I almost ignore it other than wind direction.
Some of it's confidence too. So if you get a guy that in his deepest recesses of his soul feels like that he needs to take all these precautions on scent, he feels more confident, makes him a better predator.
Yes,
and
exactly.
So some of that is got some intrinsic values, I guess.
Yes. Then there's something true to that. And that's the way my dad is. My dad is so ritualistic with the way he hunts, and he had to be successful. And he was still is a really successful bow hunter for where he lives and what he's trying to do. that's just part of his routine, you know. And you take that away from him, and he doesn't even want to go hunting.
Right.
Like, he's like, what's the point? And so it's like, hey, go ahead, do all that. That's great. I'm not going to. I'm just going to go hunt the wind.
Right.
And you know, I'm sure that there's times when, anyway, that's a different story. Scent is fascinating, though.
Yeah, good hounds will hunt the wind too. You know, they know how to use.
Tell me something else. I mean, to me, how a hound uses his nose. Can you tell me something else about that? That would, I mean, every story that you've told and every has been really good.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. I mean, you've got the.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
What's the ideal condition for a hound, and what's the worst condition?
The worst conditions for a hound is what you would find in Southwest United States. We just interviewed Chris Todd for the Houndsman XP podcast. He was talking about, he lives in Kingman, Arizona. It's desert, and it is extremely dry. They had 100 days straight last year with no rain.
Wow.
Those are tough conditions to track in. If you're catching game in those conditions, you know, you're not hunting pot lickers. The most amazing thing is, though, you take a hound from the Southwest and you'll blow his mind in the Midwest with the amount of moisture and
will he do good?
Sometimes it blows their mind. It's scent, you know, it's too much scent. It's overloaded. I would like to try it sometime and see. But you'll hear houndsmen talk about, you know, your dogs wouldn't be able to do that here. Or I took my dogs up there and they weren't able to do it. Northern Indiana, Southern Michigan, there's no. It can be tough at times, but there's a lot of coon there, and we treat a lot of coon up in that country. I live in the southern part of the state, but you'll take a dog from someplace where there aren't as many animals on the ground, the population isn't as high, and they just don't know how to. They don't know how to handle that scent overload. You know, it just blows their mind. But the most.
So tell me the science behind why arid conditions are bad.
Okay, so we could recreate the same thing out here in your driveway. If
just like on my concrete getting pounded by the sun.
Right. So you know, the scent would, if a coon or whatever animal ran down this gravel road, the sun.
This is a Bear Hunting Magazine podcast, so let's say it's a bear. Chris.
Okay, that's where it's coming
right
from.
Right in my driveway.
Yep, Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. A bear goes ripping down your road, gravel road. I need my dog to run that bear.
Yeah.
I've got bear tracks in the road. So I'm going to look at several things. I'm going to look about like the canopy in that area. Is it shaded? Because again, that scent is made up of individual cells that are deposited on the ground. If you take a grape and lay it out there on the ground in the direct sunlight, eventually it's going to shrivel up and become a raisin.
Right.
Okay, so that cell that your body is shedding when you're exhaling, it still has moisture in it.
Okay.
And when it falls onto arid conditions, it automatically starts dehydrating.
Oh, okay.
So
there's our analogy, grape to raisin.
Yep.
That's what the particles do.
Yep.
And a raisin's harder to smell than a grape.
Yep. If you cut a grape open and you smell it, you can smell it. You tear a raisin apart and it doesn't smell like a grape anymore.
Yeah.
You know, has very little odor at all. So, you know, the track runs down through there and it's on the direct sunlight, laying in rock. It's so microscopic, though, that will even blow up under rocks. So even a piece of gravel, you know, it's shaded under that piece of gravel. It may have rained last night. There's a little bit of moisture under there.
So it could do better under there.
Yeah, so you'll see a dog picking his way down through here, and you're like, I just saw the bear run through there 45 minutes ago, and my dog can't run it. It's because he's got to figure out where that scent is to pick his way down through it. You know, you get a shower on that, a light shower on that, same scenario, and they'll run it like they're on fire.
Now, okay, talk to me about this. I've also heard and have experienced high humidity being one of the worst enemies of scent. So this would be the opposite end of the spectrum. So explain to me that, and if you agree with that.
Yeah, since
super high, like if it's 85 degrees and 100% humidity. I mean, I found my dogs struggle.
Yep. So there's a lot of moisture in the air. What are the air currents doing? Is it
just dead.
Yep.
If it's that hot, it's just dead.
So we're dealing with microorganisms here that are making this scent picture. Since every living being, we've got a scent plume coming off of us. It gets suspended in the air. Like your body has a natural thermal on it. Believe it or not. You're walking through a world that's 85 degrees. Your body is 98.6. Your body's creating its own weather. So it's pluming off of your body and it moves up. So the majority of your scent is being deposited off of the top of your head.
Yeah.
Not off, not from the scalp, but it's just thermal movement up, and it's pluming off the top of your head. We're like those little puffer bottles walking around everywhere we go.
Right.
So when you have high humidity, the moisture in the air is heavier than the microorganism, so it can't move down. You get a little bit of a breeze or an air current kick up. It's like an air current or a whirlpool type effect on that, and it'll deposit it on the ground. It'll deposit it on vegetation.
That makes sense. It seems like the humidity just kind of like disperses the scent. And that would be just totally anecdotal in the sense that just seeing what I've been, I remember a couple of times when she was young, I turned around on what had to have been a hot track because I saw wet coon tracks on rocks.
Right.
I mean, just like that coon, and this is a hot summer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is in the wintertime, hot summer. And I mean, just struggled to I mean, she's just moving around.
When you were watching her, what was her natural tendency? Where was she looking for?
She was trying to put her nose on the ground most
right
of the
down
time.
on the ground because she did have a little bit of transfer onto the rocks.
Yeah.
Okay, so she knows there's something here.
Yeah.
But without an air current or time for that to sift down through the atmospheres right there, and we're talking micro atmospheres. We're not talking 13 feet.
Yeah.
Just micro. She's looking for that. She can pick up part of the scent out of those wet coon tracks because there is some transfer, but the majority of the scent coming off of that animal just hasn't settled where she can track it yet, where she naturally wants to try to find that track.
What about best case scenario? What's the best trailing conditions? Temperature and moisture.
I personally like hunting with a little bit of a breeze, humidity above 50%. But below 75. Part of that's for my personal comfort.
Yeah. Yeah.
But directs if you're bear hunting.
Is there much difference between like 60 degrees and 30 degrees? I mean, in a dog's ability to trail, that really probably wouldn't be, would there?
Not a whole lot. It's more dependent on the amount of sunlight that's hitting that track.
Okay.
The amount of moisture in the ground.
Yeah.
It's like a big picture type thing that you've got to dissect the different parts. Yeah. So, you get into an overcast day there's some moisture in the ground.
And that's a pretty good day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Going back to your like a lion track in the snow, I had a guy use a good analogy, and I like analogies like yours earlier. He told me that, these dogs can trail lines in the snow that are sometimes days old.
Right.
Pretty, they can smell it. And he said it's like refrigeration. Going back to this idea that these are particles falling off that are like organic matter, basically. I mean, they can be vaporized in the sense they're small enough particles. But, I mean, it would be like putting something in a refrigerator and it preserves it. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
He was like, so the snow, like cold, like preserves that scent, and heat would cause it to deteriorate, dry out, decompose, just go away.
Yeah.
So, he was saying that, cold kind of preserves that, but
right.
I don't know.
And it's you get scent in the bottom of a lion track or bottom of a coon track or whatever track, a human track, it doesn't matter. That those microorganisms the air is going to naturally move them into the lowest points.
Yeah.
It's like dust in your house.
Yep.
Your return vents are going to be full of dust.
Yeah.
And they'll find those low points. But yeah, it's an amazing thing. There's a couple books that I posted on social media that they're technical reads, but anybody that's looking to understand what's going on with a dog's nose, read them. Your eyes will be open.
What are the books?
One is called Scent and the Scenting Dog by Richard Sirotuck. And it's just a thin read, but it's highly technical. Don't recommend you trying to read it before you go to bed because you'll read about half a page and fall asleep. It'll take you a year to read it.
Okay.
The other one is called Scent by Persall. And that's kind of a big picture type thing where it really, really explains the physiology and it's got a lot of pictures, which are good for me.
Pictures, yep. Yeah.
Nice big pictures.
Yeah.
So you can two dry reads, but definitely beneficial to understanding environment effects and different things on scent.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. Hey, tell me about the Houndsman XP podcast. We've got you guys have produced how many episodes now?
We're going to be releasing number 18, I believe, a week from Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just tell me a little bit about it. And
yeah, the Houndsman XP podcast was something that Steve Fielder and I have developed together. We're trying to showcase, XP stands for Extreme Performance.
Yeah.
And we're trying to showcase.
You do realize that the word extreme is spelled with an E, right?
I do, but for marketing purposes, it starts with an X. So
I had to. I'm
no
sorry.
problem.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The EP podcast, Houndsman EP.
Yeah,
That doesn't.
It didn't have a ring to it.
Nah.
How are you going to market that?
I bet Steve Fielder's the one that came up with that. He's a marketing genius, right? Long pause.
We had to have a few conversations about the name, but I actually came up with the name.
I'm joking.
Yeah,
I'm totally
that's all right.
joking. This is sarcasm against Steve. Steve's a great guy.
Steve is a marketing genius.
You know, I give Steve a hard time. I'm starting to give Steve a hard time on a few things.
Yeah.
I think he appreciates it.
Yeah, he does. He likes the attention. And so I had the passion to do it and understood the I'm really concerned about the future of hound sports in the United States. And nobody is talking about how we're going to save this thing. And hunting in general is under fire across the board. And that's why we started the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance. And, you know, Steve's been involved in several fights over his years with the registries on everything from tethering legislation to out-and-out bans on pursuit of certain game animals with hounds. So we both got experience there. But Steve and I have known each other for several years. We worked on several projects together that for the Plot Dogs Championship and just a lot of, so we knew we could work together. You know, if it wasn't for Steve knows everybody. Steve knows he's got a lot of life experience with hounds, and he's a recognizable name. He's like, you know, he's just a well-known guy in the hound sports, and he has a knack for being able. If he was here and he was meeting you today, 10 years from now, Steve Fielder would remember the Bear Hunting Magazine T-shirt you were wearing, the blue jeans, and your boots. You know. He just he has an incredible memory for detail, and he's a great storyteller. And so I needed somebody like that for me to be successful, and he needed somebody like me because Steve's retired. You know, he's joked about it on the podcast before. You're working me too hard.
Yeah,
you know. But Steve still has a deep passion for hounds and hound sports and stuff, and we're just trying to bring a message, showcasing the most extreme houndsmen. We're talking about things for hound nutrition. If you get on the web and you look at healthcare, veterinarian care for dogs, there's all kinds of homebrew vet care stuff going on. So we actually put a real live veterinarian who's a houndsman.
Yeah, that was a good episode.
And talked about some technical things about hounds, you know.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to get to be entertaining. We want to be informative. So our job is to preserve, protect, and promote hound sports.
Yeah. So you are producing a weekly podcast.
Yep.
And it's anywhere from hound breeders for big game hunting, coon dogs, veterinarians, outfitters.
Right.
Anybody that's involved in the dog sports is fair game to be on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I'll say that, you kind of get a idea on some of these podcasts of how they're being received by how many reviews they have on iTunes.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost look at that and like tell quite a bit about a podcast if people are engaged enough to go and write a review.
Yeah.
And you guys have well over 100 reviews right now, which for a new podcast is great.
Yeah, we're doing very well. Our fans have been very engaged.
Yeah.
They've been hungry for a podcast that talks
just
about
dedicated.
their passions.
Yes.
And we get messages that say, when are you going to do something on running dogs, or when are you going to do something on this? And we try to take in a lot of different genres of hound hunting. But the most important thing to remember, it doesn't matter if a guy's chasing deer with his hounds in Virginia, or I'm chasing coons with my hounds in the upper Midwest. The common thread there is houndsman,
Right.
being passionate about hounds and hound hunting.
Yeah.
And we want to set the stage. We want to houndsmen haven't been good about self-promotion. You know, and so we've
got a PR problem.
Yeah, it's the low-hanging fruit on the tree right now. So there needs to be work up and down the chain there. Your deer hunters, your ungulates, big game hunters need to realize that if the antis are successful of taking away hound hunting and bear baiting, that their sport's next.
Truly is.
They're just working their way up the chain. So that's why we need the support of the like
Absolutely.
your dad from, a accomplished deer hunter.
Yeah, exactly.
So
What we've been saying, Chris, is we've been using the hashtag guard the gate. And the idea is that bear hunting, and we could incorporate hound hunting, is the gate for the anti-hunting community to enter into our sphere.
Yeah.
It is the low-hanging fruit. And and what you're doing and what we're doing is we're creating a new narrative for hound hunting, and we're not ashamed of it. And this is an ancient and honorable thing that we're a part of in modern times, and we got nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
And it's a scientific management tool. It's a tradition. It's a sound sport, an effective way to gather wildlife-related commodities for eating and for having bear hides. And
right.
I heard somebody say yesterday, a guy in the hound community that I respect, and he said, when people begin to be, how did he say it? He said basically when people begin to be persecuted, if you back down, the persecution just gets even harder. You have to stand up, and you have to not be. I don't know. And that's what we're doing. We're creating a narrative for houndsmen, and trying to recruit the support of guys that may never hound hunt. Because, and this is the way I say it always, is that we've got nothing left to give the anti-hunting community in 2019. They've taken everything that we can afford to give. So anything given to them at this point is a detriment to the whole of hunting. So
Right.
If you're an elk hunter that lives in the West that never cares about dogs, if you're a deer hunter in the South that doesn't like people running dogs, I mean, you're going to just have to get over it if you want to support the macro movement of modern hunting in modern times. And
Right.
And so that's where our message is, hey, let's come together.
Well,
Because we are it's not like two sides. It's not like you're a hound hunter and you're not a big game hunter. I mean, you're a deer hunter and you're doing all that stuff too.
right.
So it's just
And the thing that we want to do for the hound community is inspire them to build effective state organizations.
Yeah.
And do that in a way where they can go to Natural Resources Committee meetings and talk intelligently about why hound hunting is important, or why hunting in general is important.
Right.
And right now, just because your grandpa hunted, and it's not important. That's not going to cut it. You got to be able to talk about the North American model for wildlife conservation.
Right.
You need to be able to talk about, it's like the hunt that I'm returning from, Sportsmen for Heroes.
Yeah.
We're taking America's heroes to the mountains and giving them an opportunity not to kill an animal. You see a transformation from the time these guys get in camp to the time that they leave. That we have one veteran in camp that was, he told me, he's like, I was at the low point in my life. And we got him away from all of that through that organization. So now you have something that's legitimate. Why is hound hunting important? We're taking veterans hunting. Why is hound hunting important? Because houndsmen have raised several $1 million for St. Jude's Children's Hospital to fight leukemia. Who's going to say no to that? Just because, us being able to sit there and say, well, we've been doing it for 2,000 years.
Yeah, it's not good enough anymore, is it?
No, we've got to give politicians something that they can't say no to.
Yeah.
The bureaucrats.
That's right.
Yep.
Well, hey, I appreciate what you guys are doing over there, and it's a worthy cause, and you guys are doing good.
I appreciate it, Clay. You've been a big help to us too. I just want to tell all your fans that when we were getting started, I bugged you, and I appreciate your assistance in getting us rolling.
Well, no, we need guys like you guys in this sphere for sure.
Yeah.
But man, we're coming up on. We've been rolling for an hour, Chris.
Wow.
We've been rolling for an hour.
That's the thing. You get, you contact guests and you tell them how long you're going to talk to them. It's like, we're going to talk for a whole hour, and then bang.
Yeah.
They're like,
well,
really?
Do you have any closing thoughts?
Oh, just if you want to, you can go onto the Apple Podcast or any podcast venue and subscribe to the Houndsman XP Podcast. We do have any subscriptions. That's kind of what drives the market and the success of podcasting. To be able to go out and give your sponsors something that they can, some data. So that's always beneficial. And you can find us on social media at Houndsman XP Podcast, and
right on.
Jump on board. Even if you're not a hound hunter, find out what it's about. Educate yourself. Don't make assumptions. My personal, before I started watching Bear Horizons, I had zero interest in hunting black bear over bait. But the way you delivered the message and the way that it was presented, it's like, that looks, I might want to try that. I might want to do that. It gave me a whole new perspective on bait hunting.
Yeah. Right on. Well, I hope this was a podcast listener that's been calling our phone the last 3 minutes. I don't know if people could hear that, but the phone's been ringing off the hook. So if that was you, if you're listening to this podcast and that was you that called, we're sorry. We didn't pick up. No, thanks for coming, Chris. And, man, I hope you have a safe travel back home.
Yep.
But, hey, keep the wild places wild, because that's where the bears live.
You follow your hounds and I'll follow mine.
That's right.
Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.